So I'm a reformed car industry guy from Detroit, transplanted to Silicon Valley. So I just wanted to make an interesting observation that I don't know if you guys have picked up on, but the car business is really changing all of a sudden. I don't know if you noticed, but there are big changes happening. I think back to the car business of, say, just a few years ago, right? And I think about the big three Detroit CEOs going to Capitol Hill with their hat in their hand, asking for handouts while they're trying to keep their company out of bankruptcy, and they're getting vilified by senators for destroying the biggest industry in the country. And they flew back on their private jets to Detroit, wishing that they flew commercial on that trip. And I think you fast forward to today, and it feels like a completely different industry, right? You've got companies like Tesla poaching engineers from Ford. You've got Apple poaching engineers from Tesla. You've got Uber going out and hiring hackers that would have been thrown in jail 5 years ago for what they did, and now they're rock stars, and Uber's hiring them. So all of a sudden, it's cool to be a car guy again, right? So why is all this change happening? So I'll give you my theory on why this change is happening. It's happening because some guys in Silicon Valley have looked at this big industry and said, you know what, this is absolutely ripe for disruption. This is one of the biggest industries in the world, probably the biggest in the world, with a massive amount of spend. And there's so many ways that we can disrupt this thing. Let's go after it, right? So the reason that this transformation, this disruption is possible now is there's really 4 big technology trends that are happening that have enabled it. That's really what I want to talk about today, is what these 4 big technology trends are, what the impact on the car business is, and in particular the impact on the insurance business is going to be over the next few years, even over the next few decades, and really focus on the first trend, the first technology trend, which is connectivity, the connected car, because that's here with us right now. So focus on that, what customers really expect, what they want from the connected car, and kind of wrap up with some thoughts on what it means for you as insurers. What kind of action can I take to be prepared for these changes that are on the way? So let's talk about the first of these 4 major trends. It's the connected car, right? Connectivity. Connectivity is kind of changing everything. It's the plumbing layer that's enabling all these other disruptive technologies that are coming up on us right now. So it's the thing that enables UBI and connected insurance and everything that we're talking about. But it enables real-time traffic and navigation and infotainment and firmware updates and all this other stuff that individually are really important, interesting things, but together they become things that are, it's a must-have for the car going forward, right? You've got 250 million cars on the road today that are really just computers with wheels, and they're all completely disconnected, right? That's got to change. That's changing already. You see the OnStars of the world getting all their cars connected, so that's changing. There's going to be a bunch of different flavors of it, beamed in, brought in, tethered, embedded connectivity, but connectivity is on its way. And it's really fundamental to these other technologies that are coming. So a second big wave, big technology trend that's happening is sharing, car sharing, the on-demand economy, right? The first on-demand, sort of car sharing. You think back to like Zipcar. It really goes back further than that. It's really the Avis and Hertz of the world. Those are the first car shares, right? The rental companies were where it all started. And those businesses were so not sexy that even the OEMs divested of them, right? But keep your eye on those companies, because all of a sudden they're going to become really interesting again, is my theory. So sharing, the reason we're talking about it now is because you've got kind of the biggest unicorn that Silicon Valley's ever seen now in Uber, making people understand what the potential of car sharing is, right? Where it's going, where even today it's growing incredibly fast. Just wait till you combine it with some of the other technologies that are coming and see how fast it grows and how transformational it is for the business. The third one is electrification, right? All you need to know about how much of an impact this is having is listen, if you saw the news last week, Tesla literally broke the J.D. Power scale for how they rate customer satisfaction, right? Their customers love the car so much that they didn't even know how to measure it. It's like they had to start a new rating system. There's got to be a reason for that, right? That's not normal. And part of it's because they have a rock star CEO and it's a great company and an amazing car, but part of it is because the underlying technology is so vastly superior to what we're used to today, right? The battery technology is going to keep getting better and better and better, and someday all of a sudden people are going to realize, wow, this is the only way to build a car. That's what cars are going to look like in the future. If you look at those cars, has anybody ever been into a Tesla dealership and see the display they have at each one of them? Yeah, so what they do is, it's a really cool display. They take the body panels off the car so you get to see the plumbing and how it works, the underpinnings of the car. And it's so simple, right? It's just a big battery, 4 wheels, and a brushless electric motor. And you think about that compared to today's typical internal combustion engine that's just full of hoses and fluids and piston rings and all these things that are going to wear out and spill oil on your driveway. And it's just, you realize that it's just a vastly superior way to build a car. And that's the way the cars are going to be built in the future. And this is going to have big implications. You think about, even today, you look at that car, I encourage you to go into a Tesla dealership and look at it. It looks more like a smartphone on wheels than it does a traditional car. And you think about the impact on the supply chain and the folks that are really qualified to build a product like that. And you hear these rumors about Apple getting into the car business, and it starts to make sense, right? That looks like a product that they could build really well. They're the masters of supply chain, right? It doesn't even look like a product that the traditional big three would build today. And then the fourth big technology trend is the killer, right? This is the one that we talk about and we fear all the time. It's autonomy. It starts with partial autonomy, things like collision avoidance technology, that kind of thing, and it goes to full autonomy. The Google car is driving around Mountain View now with no drivers in it, right? So this is all real. It's all here now. How many people, has anybody been in the driver's seat of a car that has collision avoidance, forward collision avoidance technology built into it? Is anybody? Yeah, it's pretty new, but anybody actually, kind of taking their eye off the road for a minute and experience the brakes, happening automatically for you? I tell you, as an insurance person, it completely changes the way that I would think about insurance, right? The first time it happened to me, my immediate thought was, this is going to have such a massive impact on road safety, right? Simple things like that. That's just the first step in autonomy, but you get a real visceral feeling for how technology is going to improve road safety all the way to full autonomy. So the good news is it's a long road. There's a lot of time between now and then when we get to full autonomy, these autonomous cars driving around. But they're coming. It's undeniable. They're already on the road in Mountain View. You can't spend a day there without kind of running into one. But there are a lot of problems left to solve. They're not in a shape where they can really be out on the road in mass. But they're going to get there. So let's think about specifically the impact on insurance of these different technologies. Right? Connectivity. That's the enablement layer. That's what it's enabled everything we're talking about here, connected insurance. That's about insight into the car. You've got better insight into the car and what's happening. You can price drivers more fairly, right? You can price insurance more fairly. It's a great thing. Car sharing, it's interesting, the short-term impact of car sharing is going to be very different than the long-term impact. Car sharing in the short term just adds more complexity to our business, right? It doesn't change it structurally. You have to slice up liability into thinner and thinner slices, not even by trip. It's like intra-trip, right? What part of this trip was a TNC drive, what part of this trip was a personal drive, right? So it just makes the business more complex, but it doesn't change it structurally. So that structural change is coming out further. Electrification, you could argue this is going to have the least impact on insurance, but the scenario I think about is when we have a road full of cars, electric cars, that have hot swappable batteries, and all of a sudden 60% of the value of the car can be swapped out as quickly as a fuel up at the fuel station, right? What does that do to insurance? How do you insure that? But the big one again is autonomy. That's going to have the big impact. In the short term, it's going to be more incremental change like we've seen in the past. Cars keep getting safer and safer and safer. It's like airbags. You got collision avoidance. It's going to make things safer. And then at some point, we see the fleet of autonomous vehicles hit the road, and it changes everything. You think about autonomous vehicles combined with car sharing, and you think of a fleet of Uber cars with no drivers in them that never have to stop and take a break for Starbucks. They can go all night long. Think about the change. It's going to have a huge, huge impact, not just on the insurance business in terms of, the thing we always talk about, like now we're going to be insuring Google for the code that they write to drive those cars. It's going to change the ownership structure of cars on the road today, because Uber is not going to be insuring, or they're not going to be working with a fleet of independent contractors driving these cars around. They're going to buy gazillions of cars themselves, and you're going to have one big commercial insurance policy insuring it, right? And that makes all this stuff we're talking about here much, much different, right? That's not a personal lines business anymore. That's something very different. But the good news is we got a lot of time before we get there, right? But it's coming, so I think we need to start talking about it now. There's a good friend of mine, Brian Johnson, is the lead auto industry analyst at Barclays, and he's put together some really interesting stats around this space and the transformation that's coming. He put a paper out, but some great stats in there. You look at the utilization of cars today, it's 4%, right? 96% of the time, we're trying to figure out where to stick the thing, right? What do we do with the car? 4% of the time it's actually doing something. That changes dramatically in the future of autonomous cars, right? A few decades from now, these cars, they never need to stop, they always keep working. So what happens is you have a big reduction in the number of cars per household, a big reduction in the number of cars on the road, big increase in the utilization of those cars, the number of miles that are put on every one of those cars. His predictions add up. There's a really kind of staggering impact. There's a study done in Austin on the queuing and mapping of all these cars, and it says that one shared autonomous vehicle, they call them SAVs, so just think of an Uber car with no driver in it, right? Can displace 9 traditional cars on the road, right? That's going to have a huge impact. The talk about the end game here is it reduces the car park by 40%. You don't have 250 million cars on the road anymore that are driven by personal drivers. You've got 150 million cars on the road, the vast majority of which are owned by a big commercial fleet like Uber, right? So it's interesting what's coming. Of course, it's all driven by the economics. You take the driver out of the equation, and all of a sudden, it's a corner case for you to be able to justify owning your own car, right? You go from a world today where you've got about underlying costs about $3 a mile for an Uber. That changes in the future to 16 cents, 34 cents if it's a pooled or an individual Uber, autonomous Uber. In any scenario of normal mileage, that's going to be cheaper than owning your own car. So now it's, what does that do? That kind of changes everything. The economics always drive this, right? So how fast is this going to happen? So I put some of my predictions together here. You take them with a grain of salt, right? But I've tried to look at all the studies, what the experts are saying. The first wave is connectivity, right? That's already happening now. We're on our way. The good thing about all this stuff is that whatever you do in the car business takes a long time. Right? You think about introducing new technology into cars, and you've got 5 years before it comes out the other end of the product development cycle, then another 10 to 15 years before it really penetrates the car park. So you get 15 years to play with before any of this stuff happens. And on top of that, a few of these technologies are going to take a while to get there. But connectivity is already on its way, so it's got a head start. It's coming first. Car sharing, that doesn't have it's not encumbered by the car product development cycle, so that's gonna be the fastest grower of all of them, right? Uber's sort of hacked autonomous driving now, right? They just put a driver in the driver's seat, but that's a lot like what it's gonna feel like. Electrification, it's gonna grow slow and steady. It has the added burden of the Fortune 5 doesn't want this to happen, right? The oil and gas business pretty much dominates our economy, so they're going to put up a bunch of blockers to slow it down, but it's an unstoppable force, right? The technology is going to prove itself out. And then partial autonomy, that's going to grow slow and steady, but it's going to get helped at some point along the way by regulation, right? And we're going to have the data that shows how impactful it is on road safety, so that's going to grow pretty quickly. And full autonomy, the thing we're all scared of, luckily that's going to be the slowest grower, right? We got a few years before they figure out all the corner cases and you can really make the truly autonomous car work on the road, but it's coming. So we need to start talking now to be prepared for this world, right? This is what that world's going to look like. Algorithmically driven vehicles, right? Where's the room in this for the conventional driver? That's going to be a scary world to ensure. So we've got some time. But we got to start thinking about what that world looks like, right? So let's put that on the back burner for a while and start talking about today, what's in front of us today. So it's really the connected car that we have to think about today. What are the implications for the connected car? Where is that going? And really, what do consumers expect and want from a connected car? So connected car, again, is the enablement layer. That's the plumbing that makes all of this stuff possible, right? And we see the impact already of what we're all talking about here. It's enabled UBI, right? It's done this great thing. It's given us more insight into what our drivers are doing so we can price them more fairly, right? It's taken the insurance business from a set of weak signals and pooling risk to actually managing risk and rewarding safer behavior. So it's a way better way to do insurance, right? So you have the lifetime value of a customer. You get some better insights through driving data. You can make that better. We can price it more fairly. Customer helps us out a little bit with some self-selection. That's all the benefits. Then you have to offset that with some discounts on the policy to make them opt in. And then you've got to pay all the guys in this room to make the program work and your TSP costs. And then when you're done, it's kind of an interesting business, but not really that interesting. You're not that far ahead of where you started, right? What I want to talk about, and what I hope we're all thinking about here is what I call UBI 2.0, right? How do we turn the screws on this business and make it work a little bit better, take some of the cost out of the provisioning of the service, right? Get those TSP costs down, get the cost of the cell phone plan out of there, right? It's just not sustainable. I'm just going to say it, right? You cannot build your program, your connected insurance program, if you've got to pay an extra cell phone bill for the customer. How are you going to keep that customer connected for the lifetime, right? And what we're looking for is lifetime engagement, right? We want to shift the dialogue with the insured to a different dialogue than one about pricing today. You saw what's coming in the future. We have to change what we are when we think about the services we provide as an insurer, as this sort of blanket of security provided for these customers. We have to start that now, and that means to start talking about services instead of talking about price. You have to create these really compelling services that the customer really buys into, right? And it's going to make them a customer for life. It's going to make them love doing business with you, and they're never going to want to leave. That's where the real benefit in UBI and connected insurance comes from. That's what we need to start thinking about now. So how do you start that path down to services, right? What psychic permission do you have from your customers to provide these kind of services, right? What services can you provide? Maybe they'd expect services that are about making the insurance experience better or making me safer on the road, right? So we have an app called License Plus that's on our platform. It's our team's spin on teen driving solution. It's a way to create a coaching moment between the parent and the teen, make them better, safer drivers, allow the parent to catch the teen doing something good instead of something bad. It's not about teen spyware, right? It's about making them really safer drivers. So we kind of have permission to provide that. Insurance, I think, can use this products like this. But where else can you go from there, right? There's so many problems to solve around the connected driving experience. We've heard the stats all the time. There's so many things about owning a car and buying a car and servicing a car that people absolutely hate, right? So much low-hanging fruit. This is not low-hanging fruit. This is like fruit that's on the picnic blanket, right, ready to go, right? So, but the insurance industry doesn't really have permission to provide these kind of services. It's not what they'd expect from you as an insurance company. So you need to think about, who do I partner with? What kind of partners do I go after that have that kind of permission that customers might expect a product like that from? The other good news is customers want this, right? They don't even fully understand what the connected car is and what it can do for them, but they just know they want it, right? Survey after survey says, this is something that I want. It's like the way the music business changed, right? The car business is changing from car companies differentiating on performance to differentiating on in-car technology. So customers definitely want this. But what do they want specifically, right? There's things that they want, there's things that they don't want. There's a bunch of, I was going through a bunch of research the other day that I found really interesting. Nielsen's done some research, J.D. Power just put out a survey. I kind of mashed them up a little bit to try and see if I can get some themes out of what customers really want. And this is the surveys they did were around what customers really bought, stuff that they actually purchased, stuff that they were going to purchase in their next car. So it's stuff they're really buying, not what they're talking about buying. So I think it's even more powerful, right? And what it said customers want are things that, I think the theme is they want incremental problems solved for them. They don't want a worse version of a solution that they already have, right? So things like navigation. They have navigation on their phone already. The navigation on the phone is kind of dangerous. I need that in a heads-up display on the dash, right? So navigation is valuable for me. I'll pay for it. Collision avoidance. That's something only the OEMs can do, right? Build that technology into my car so that next time I take my eye off the road, I'm still going to be safe. And built-in apps. Those are all the individual point solutions, the problem solvers that customers want. So I think that's a really good thing. This is the kind of stuff they're looking for. This is the kind of stuff that they're not looking for on the bottom is stuff that they already have a solution for. In-car concierge. I don't want my car to go order Chinese food for me, right? I've got a way to do that on my phone already, and it's always going to be a better way to do it. Wi-Fi hotspot, the same thing. Kind of interesting, but I'm not going to pay for another plan. I got a Wi-Fi hotspot on my phone. I don't need that in my car, right? So this is the stuff that customers are saying that they do and they don't want. So, but how do you really take it to the next level and figure out what customers really want and are really, truly value in a connected car solution? Well, you need to go out into the bloody battlefield of the consumer electronics business, right? That's where solutions are proven, where you find product market fit. It feels like this, but it actually looks like this. So for those of you that don't know the product, the automatic product, I'll give you the quick pitch on that. But we have a product that's in stores right now. It's a consumer connected car product that we sell. 99. The idea is $99, no monthly service fee, turns any car into a connected car. We sell it in Best Buy, Amazon, Apple, Target, great retail partners. And we're out there trying to make this work for the category, right? Build that awareness around the category so people start to understand what the connected car is and what it can do for them. And in the process, we're learning a lot about what they want, right? They buy this device from us, comes with a series of core apps on the platform that we built, the kind of the Fitbit for the car. Oh, by the way, if you want to score your insurance drivers in that, we do that too, right? It's part of the solution. We embedded in this great connected car solution. We've got automatic crash response service like OnStar without the monthly fee, remote diagnostics, location services, so all this cool stuff that comes in the core product. And recently we got a bunch of press because we launched what our app gallery. It's our third-party API platform. It's what the press is calling the App Store for the car, right? So we launched this open API platform, and a bunch of great partners went out there and built apps to bring the connected car into their solution. Companies like Nest and Jawbone and Concur, and companies that you've heard of. So we got dozens and dozens of apps out there now that are giving us more insight into what consumers really want. Our Nest app is really cool. It does a real sort of high fidelity solution that lets you use ETAs, traffic times, weather, mashes that all up into a way to program your thermostat so that it always goes on at the right time based on your trip home. It can use automatic to figure out where the car is and how long it's going to take it to get home with traffic and warm up the house accordingly. Concur, this is magical expense reporting, right? Everybody's got this horrible problem. Not everybody, but a lot of people have this problem. I expense my business miles, right? It's a horrible handwritten process, right? I got to submit the expense report. This now is a process with the app that Concur built on our platform. You end a trip, a notification pops up on your Apple Watch that says, yes, tag this as a business trip. Boom, your expense report is done. It happens magically, you get paid for it. So connected apps like that, those are the problem solvers that are the connected car can enable. We did a deal with Ford. Ford's a great partner of ours to basically kind of firmware upgrade their cars over the air. First generation sync vehicles, we did a joint development agreement where you plug the device into a compatible Ford car, and now you can reprogram the steering wheel button so that it launches Siri instead of sync, because Siri came out after sync, so a lot of customers want that. So that's a big problem solver for them. We have another app partner that we work with called IFT. It's a platform called IFT. And this is like a big series of hundreds of kind of DIY apps that customers have built to solve their own individual problems around driving and what they want the connected car to do for them. And so I took all this information and I said, what can I do to keep you guys awake in the morning, give you a little insight into what customers really want from their connected car in the real world. So here's some data behind the scenes, competitors, close your eyes, I don't want you to see this, but this is our the type of traction that we're getting with different apps on the platform. Like what the idea was, I want to find a killer app. Maybe there's one app that everybody downloads and has to have, right? So our top 10 apps, the takeaway is, our top 10 apps, they only make up about a little over 40% of our total app download base. So it's pretty well distributed, right? The other chunk of that is a bunch of different apps, a lot of those IFT apps that I talked about. But even within those top 10, you've got 5 apps, 5 different ways to solve the expense reporting problem. Like if your company uses Concur or Expensify or FreshBooks, you have to do it a different way. Each one takes a different app to solve the problem. So I said, no killer app identified there, right? So I tried to take another cut and say, maybe the first app that they download, maybe that's the killer app for everybody. Maybe every app downloads one app first. And so these are the top 10 first apps downloaded. And really nothing pops out. Nest is, like a lot of folks like the Nest integration, the Jawbone integration. We have a partnership we did with Jawbone where your driving information feeds into your fitness stream so that you can see how that affects your kind of quantified health. So the takeaway is here, this is pretty distributed too. Not one app that really jumps out of just the top 10 here. So for me, the takeaway is, the killer app is not so much any one individual app. The killer app is really the same thing it was when Apple launched the iPhone. It's the App Store itself, right? It's the ability to give these customers choice and a way to solve all these different long-tail problems So when the iPhone launched the third-party app store, that was the inflection point, right, for them. That's when people really understood what the smartphone could do for them. We're seeing the same thing happen around the connected car, the automatic API platform. Customers really resonate this, and developers are diving in and say, hey, I want to bring the car into my connected experience. I've got a tool to use it right now. We take care of all the heavy lifting around security and making sure there's secure AES encryption all the way through the system. The hard stuff folks don't want to do with hardware, we let them focus on developing, great software solutions for all those developers that are great at doing that. So I think the killer app is the App Store, right? So now hopefully there's some useful information in here for you, but I tried to think about all these insights I pulled together here, and how can I turn that into something actionable? How can you as insurers have some takeaways here that could be an action plan that could apply to sort of every connected insurance, every UBI effort that you might do here going forward. So I came up with a few sort of common things that I think everybody should focus on. First, there's 3 steps in it. I'd say start with defining your objectives, right? What do you want to get out of your connected insurance program? And I think there's a few building blocks that everybody should be looking for, right? First one is engagement. If you're making this about price, just don't even bother, right? That's not interesting. This needs to be about long-term engagement. And if you're going after long-term engagement, you have to reach an affordability threshold where you can keep the car connected, right? You've got to make this a connected car over the life of the policy, or else it's an exercise that just wasn't worth it. If it's 90 days and out, just don't even bother. Reliable data. Look for a partner that can deliver that for you. There's a bunch of different solutions we're talking about here, different ways to skin the cat. We're talking about smartphone-only solutions, OBD device solutions, OEM solutions. Just make sure you've got data that's reliable enough. So ultimately, you win the game of trying to reduce friction as much as possible. Right? It's always this balance between how can I reduce friction in the solution, but still get the data that I need to do everything I need with it. So there's friction in plugging an OBD device in. There's friction in killing your customer's battery, right? Customer satisfaction issues around that. You have to look at all those factors and figure out what works best for you. Secondly, I think it's really important to find the right partner, right? You don't want to do this yourselves. You want somebody else to do this for you. This is not the business. You don't want to, trust me, you don't want to be in the consumer electronics business. And first, you need to look for a partner that takes security very seriously, right? Table stakes are security. We've seen what's been happening around the hacking of cars. You got to make sure you're working with somebody that knows what they're doing. That's hopefully somebody whose device has not gotten hacked and knows, and for good reason, right? I would also posit that you should look for somebody that knows consumer, right? You're in the business of dealing with end consumers, right? It's a tough business, keeping all those consumers happy. Hopefully you don't have to settle for a standard where your TSP provider doesn't know consumer as well as you do, right? Because this is going to be all about how do you make consumers happy and keep real end users engaged. So look for somebody that really has the chops in consumer and has the chops in UX, right? UX everybody glosses over, but that really makes a difference in terms of engagement over the long term. And just make sure they're committed and capable, right? A partner that's going to be around, that's going to stick around through this. And then the last one I'd say is lead with the experience, right? Experience with the capital E. Don't make it about insurance. We talk about it all the time. Folks don't want to plug this thing in for insurance reasons, right? They want a connected car. They don't want an insurance dog. We've seen plenty of studies on that. So don't make it about insurance. And I would also say, if we take one thing out of this conference, what I would love is that we never use the term, we never shoot for the term anyway, value-added services anymore, right? If there's a way that you could better say that services are an afterthought on this thing, I don't know what better way to say it than to call it value-added services, right? You shouldn't be value-added services. That sounds like a thin veneer of service on top of insurance spyware to me, right? Your customers are smarter than that. Make services the core of your offering, right? That's what you need to focus on and get really great. Aim for delightful services, not value-added. And then one thing that we talk about a lot at Automatic, all the time, we show up at work every morning and talk about earning the right to be plugged into that customer's car, right? Because a customer always has the option. They can push the button and stop sharing. They can unplug the device and throw it out. It's always going to be the customer's option. So it's up to you to earn the right to create such delightful services, such an amazing experience that they would never think about pulling it out and making their car an unconnected car again. So that's really it. I think the takeaway is it's all worth it, right? This is a long journey. We're in the first mile of this long journey. And I think we should all keep at it because now is the time to start thinking about how do you plan for that future that we talked about, that future with those autonomous cars floating all around, because you need to start shaping the expectations of what your customers think about when they think about what their insurance company can do for them. So start that process now, and I think we'll be in a position where we're ready when the invasion of the army of Uber robo-taxis comes and descends upon us. So that's it. That's all I had to say today. Thanks.